A very good afternoon to you, Unathi. So I guess, given that the global conference has indeed set itself this target to eliminate child labour by 2025, the main question there would be whether or not they'll be able to meet this particular target. I mean, you look at the fact that 160 million children are said to be labourers, and wonder if 2025 is really a realistic target.
Absolutely, Flo. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to you and to our viewers. Of course, SA Today coming to you live from Durban this afternoon, and of course we are here for this conference, a very important conference, the fifth one of its kind, and of course the first time in Africa. And as to your question, speaker after speaker saying children have no place in child labour, yet we are sitting with 160 million children, and most of them in harmful work environments, when that should not be the case. And of course, these numbers were dating back early 2020, and that is up from 152 million in 2016. So you can see that sharp increase, and in fact statistics showing that by the end of this year an additional 9 million children will be added to that 160 million, which is a huge concern. It becomes even more worrying and concerning when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals that the conference has set itself as a target to say that we will eradicate, child labour by 2025. And on that same Sustainable Development Goal, the conference delegates telling themselves that they will also, eradicate forced labour, human trafficking, as well as modern slavery. So the question remains, how will it be done? Is there a will? Speaker after speaker here at the conference saying that they have no choice but to make sure that that target is reached in terms of eliminating child labor. And in fact, one of the most heroic things, I think, which is also a first for South Africa, is that they invited children to this conference. It was important for South Africa to showcase that this is a conference essentially talking about children, and that their basic rights are being infringed upon. So what the Social Development Department in South Africa did and maintained, together with the Employment and Labour Department, is to ensure that a child representative, not only representing South Africa, not only representing Africa, but also globally, was here, and that they had a platform. In fact, I am now joined by my guest, Ulumga Olifant. She's a spokesperson for social development here in the country, and we're going to be discussing that very important question. Why did you decide, to give children the much needed voice this time around?
First of all, South Africa's constitution, it guarantees child participation, and also Article 12 of the United Nations Child Convention on the Rights of the Child guarantees that children have a right to participation. So along with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and our Constitution, we also had to make sure that we don't only have this in the books of the country, but also as we do it, and we make sure that children get participation in conferences of this nature. But we do all the time in the country. When we have everything that we do, we take it to the children. We have what is called the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament, which happens every year in the country, where voices of children speak about everything that concerns them, everything that they want government to take forward on their behalf. Most of the things that you may see in the policies, and you may even see in the courts, are things that children themselves speak about. One of the things that comes to mind is also corporal punishment in the home, where children were always talking about it. And as you know, that in the past this also went up to the Constitutional Court. Children have had a voice through the Department of Social Development. During COVID-19, when we have Child Protection Week, we always make sure that the participation of children is guaranteed. So this is why we had to make sure that our children come from all over the country, by the children's ambassadors, by the members of the Children's Parliament to come to this conference and be able to have their voices heard. And of course, as you have heard in the conference, this was a first of its kind for this conference. And we want to say as South Africa that the children's voices in everything that we do are a matter, even in the home, even at schools. Children's voices must always be heard.
You know, Lumka, to give children agency is very important, but we also, heard some startling, statistics around just the children that are affected when it comes to child labor. When President Cyril Ramaphosa was talking, emphasizing on that fact that we are also talking about children in the ages of 5 to 14 years old who are subjected to these kinds of harmful environments. As a Department of Social Development, what for you are the practical steps that you will take in order to ensure that you do somehow play your part in eliminating child labour come 2022? What is your role as a department?
I think it's not only the role of the Department of Social Development. The child protection system is for the rest of government. It's for communities. It is also for families, most importantly, because children come from families. It means that we have to strengthen our campaigns. It means that we have to strengthen that parents must understand that children have a right to play, children have a voice, children have a right to education. And we have seen that with also the other statistics that basic education as a child protection tool is a working system. You would have seen that the numbers of even teenage pregnancy, when children were not at school, there was an increase in those cases. So it means that the tools that government has are working, and basic education as that tool is really working. So the importance of making children, to making sure that children are in school. We have also seen that even with the social assistance that we provide, if you look at the outcomes of matric, when you are looking at the children that come out of matric, it is the children that are in the social assistance program, which is the social grants. So it means that government is doing a lot now. It means that we need to make sure that we take this to communities, we take this especially to families, because families are the strength, are where children come from. And also you have heard about domestic chores, that parents also feel sometimes that children have to do chores, but these chores must also be age appropriate. These chores must not hinder the education of children. Earlier, we went to a child and youth care center here in Durban, and children were also telling us that one of the children was in conflict with the law, where he was given drugs to sell by an adult, and now he was now in our center, which for rehabilitation, because now he has to go through trial and now is not in school, but our services there at the center are assisting him to be able to. So these are things that we need to also sensitize children themselves, that they also must know how to see and identify what is child labor and be able to speak out for themselves. And children, most importantly, must know where to report and who to report to.
You mentioned that you went to a youth center here in Durban. Of course, one of the things that was mentioned by some of the delegates is essentially what this city has just endured. COVID-19, as well as the floods and the unrest, have also been blamed to almost set the clock back in as far as the fight for the end of child labor is concerned. You went around with the minister. Talk to us about, just the places that you visited, and how are those children doing, and what the plan is by the department, because it is some time back, following those floods, one would expect some of those children to at least be held in suitable shelters and also be starting to go to school.
Yes, children are in suitable shelters, but remember that children come from families. You can't just decide to separate children from their parents or their caregivers. So when you give services to children, you must understand that they come from a family. So therefore, there are shelters where families are together with the children. And also, if you see, SASA particularly has been trying to make sure that these children get uniform, because some of them have had lost their uniforms. And also remember that the child protection system is not just a social development. It is education, it is home affairs, it is health, and all these departments have been here to make sure that these families that are in shelters where children come from get the necessary services.
Just a final question from me. We have these policies that speak to the basic rights of children, but we are on social media. We see that there is a new trend of child influencers, and it doesn't seem that is accommodated in what we are talking about as child labor. Children being mentioned on social media, children being made to be influencers, like I said, host television channels, etc., etc. That is also a form of employment. Do you recognize it at all as child labor?
I'm sure you had heard even in the delegates, they were talking about age appropriate. They were talking about the types of labor that you can give to children. They were talking about not hindering the education of children if you are going to give them any kind of work. So when these things are taken care of and we can be able to see that it is in the interest of children, it is not that it is not included, but it must be done according to the confines and the descriptions of what child labor is.
All right. Lumka, thank you so much for your time. Lumka Oliphant there, the spokesperson from the Department of Social Development. Now, one of the things, Flo, that was also discussed here is what now? Delegates are moving into plenary sessions from tomorrow until Friday. They will be discussing the previous conference 5 years ago, which took place in Buenos Aires in 2017. And of course, the first conference that we know of this kind was held in 1997, so far way off. And between the third and the fourth conference, that's when that target of eliminating child labor was then adopted to go in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And that target is, of course, of 2025. So the big question is this a talk shop, or will we see some fundamental decisions being taken and that goal being met in 2025? Of course, Tulas Ngesi, the Minister of Employment and Labour, saying that at the end of the conference, the delegates will adopt Durban Call to Action, and that document will then obviously be adopted by all member countries that are here attending this conference. We're looking at about 160 different countries that are representative here. We've seen that delegates also at pains to say, whilst they would like to meet those targets, it is important for them to start taking action. So the end of conversation and also just the start of taking action. Flow.
All right, thanks very much, Unathi, for us there at the Durban ICC in KZN at the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour, which just wrapped up today with President Cyril Ramaphosa closing, addressing, of course, that conference.